So, Ben, welcome. Tell us a little bit about how you started playing. When did it all start for you as music?
So I started really quite young. My dad was a bass player. He played in a band. So I sort of grew up falling asleep at night listening to him rehearsing function gig tunes, which now I do. So so I kind of grew up with music around me all the time. Dad was a big blues fan. I started playing guitar in I think year 2, so quite young. And then kind of took it from there.
So that year 2, that's about what, 7 years old?
Yeah.
Something like that. And can you remember, how did you find it at the time? Did you find it difficult starting that young?
I think I was always really excited about playing the guitar because I obviously watched my dad do it. My brother also played guitar. He was a year and a half older than me, so it was sort of something I sort of expected that I would eventually do. When I first started learning, actually, I had classical guitar lessons and I hated it.
I take it personally.
But I think it was because all this music I was hearing at home and on in the car and all that stuff. Just seemed completely unrelated to what I would then sit in a lesson and learn. And I kind of struggled myself through classical grade 1, but then straight after that sort of just wanted to move away from that completely.
So your actual instrument is the one you're holding, the bass guitar. At what point did you move from being a guitarist to being a bass guitarist?
Yeah, so I mean that kind of happened, I think. I had guitar lessons, classical guitar lessons, then I started doing... then I went straight on the bass actually after that.
Okay.
Because as I said, Dad was a bass player. My brother played guitar. I did my first gig when I was 12. It was in a pub about an hour and a half outside of Paris. And because we already had my brother playing guitar, we started a band, and basically somebody needed to play bass.
Okay.
And I think maybe I wanted to just be a little bit different as well. So it's probably part of that too. But then I kind of just fell in love with bass playing.
And there's always a need for bass players, isn't there? There's always a hole for them somewhere. So
yeah.
Probably quite a good career move as well.
Absolutely, yes. Everybody should play. Actually, no, not everyone should play bass because that put me out of work. So you should all learn guitar.
And so you were in bands and playing in bands, and where was this where you were growing up?
I was born in Epsom and then grew up on the sort of Surrey-Hampshire border.
Okay, so you're gigging around that area. Yeah. And this was what, teenage years by now?
Yeah, teenage years I gigged a lot locally, and then went to ACM, the Academy of Contemporary Music. For university. I actually went there straight out of school, so I went there when I was 16. And actually a year before that, when I was doing my GCSEs, I used to go there for Saturday school effectively. And then I started doing a lot of gigs in London, joined a few bands in London, started doing some touring work, but really kind of London centric. We used to joke that we were touring off London just all year round.
The Circle Line tour.
Exactly, yeah. So we used to do a lot of that, and so I got into originals bands, started doing recording, recorded a few albums in studios and stuff. Yeah. Did a few small tours, and then
Yeah. So out of your kind of playing career, what would be a highlight for you? What would be like your big thing as going? Oh, I'm so proud of that when I played that gig.
There's probably a couple of different things, because I think of my career, if you like, as being split into different avenues. Mm-hmm. So my kind of bass playing career. I was interviewed in Bass Guitar magazine. That was that was a cool thing. That was in 2014 when the band I was playing with, we'd just finished recording their second album, and we did a couple of quite big gigs at sort of 5,000 people type venues. And so that was a definite highlight. That was really cool. And then my career kind of took a different turn, and I ended up moving to East Asia. And then being a bass player then became not that useful, because I couldn't stand on stage on my own and just play bass. I could, but nobody would want to watch it. So I ended up kind of getting back into playing guitar, and I'd always kind of played guitar alongside bass, but never like sort of professionally or any kind of gigging stuff. Yeah. So then I got really into finger picking and learning to kind of perform on my own playing guitar. Yeah. So that's kind of, I think when I started doing those gigs, that was kind of like another level unlocked, because it was just something different.
And is that like finger picking, like acoustic style, electric? What kind of thing was that?
Yeah, mostly acoustic. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so tell me about Southeast Asia. Like, what's that all about?
East Asia, yeah. So I moved to Shanghai in 2017. Mm-hmm. And I kind of went there for work, so I got a job teaching music out there, head of music in a school, which was really cool opportunity. I worked in a couple of private guitar schools out there, joined a band after doing some solo gigs, because I got very burnt out gigging, basically. I was doing a lot of gigging here, and decided, okay, I just want to do something different. And I'd always done teaching, and I always really enjoyed teaching, so okay, let's lean into that, and opportunity to go somewhere totally different, learn a new language, teach somewhere else. And then within the first week, there was a bar opposite the apartment building I lived in, and I went into it, and I was like, "Can I play a gig here?" They were like, "Yeah." So then I started doing there. I was playing there pretty much every week, and I sort of became part of the like house band, this kind of blues jazz bar in downtown Shanghai. And then I met some other guys through that. I started playing in the band out there. So, and obviously alongside all of that was my teaching stuff. So it was always very much sort of teach, play, teach,
so
play.
Teaching's always kind of formed part of your kind of portfolio career, as they call it.
Yeah. I mean, I very much had that portfolio career, like because what I studied at music college was production.
Yeah.
And so straight after music college, I was doing some producing music for video and adverts and stuff like that. I had a sort of short-lived period of time doing that for a couple of American TV channels. And so it was always part that, part teaching, part gigging. It was sort of, I always just saw it like, my thing was that I always wanted to make money with a guitar around my neck.
Yep.
Was kind of what it was, and I didn't really mind what I was doing. But the teaching is really the thing that I ended up falling in love with, because I mean, and I think initially that was probably because it sort of fit my lifestyle a bit better.
Yeah.
But eventually, I think it was because I ended up just preferring it as a sort of career.
Yeah, it's interesting because lots of people do that, have that kind of mixture of things, and don't realise that actually you might see someone who's a drummer. But quite often they're not just a drummer, they might be a songwriter as well, and doing some production work and some recording work, and a session musician and teaching and editing and all kinds of stuff in there. So that's very much a life of a musician these days. And so tell us a little bit about your kind of approaches to teaching and what fires you, what gets you excited about teaching?
Yeah, so I mean, my approach to teaching, I guess, has changed quite a lot since I first started. I think when I first started, it was very much that kind of book teacher. I'd gone through the rock school grades when I was learning bass, and then later when I was learning guitar. So I kind of just rinsed and repeated what I'd been taught. I had a very, very good bass teacher. He's an incredible bass player. But I kind of thought, okay, that's what I need to do. I need to, ask the student to buy the book and then go, okay, let's look at the pieces. Let's do piece one and kind of go with that. And nothing wrong with that. And I still do that for students that particularly want to go through the exam syllabus. But I think what's developed in my teaching is this idea of kind of my job being to be the conduit between the inspiration that the student has and the knowledge that I know the student needs to gain, or the skills or the technique that they need to gain. So for an example, I've got a student that really wants to get into playing slap bass, and they're really interested in playing slap, but he really likes punk and ska. And it's like, okay, right, so it's kind of, where can I sit? Where can I find that piece of music or that band or that bass player to study that's going to give me both of those things? And it's like, okay, well then maybe like Norman Watt-Roy, Ian Dury and the Blockheads, that sits exactly there. Had I come in and gone, okay, cool, you want to do slap, so let's look at some Parliament funk from the 70s, that might have just been like, oh, that's not really what I had in mind, So there are always ways, I think there's always a way of marrying up those two things. And so I think a lot of my teaching is kind of informed by that. So that's right from the younger students I teach who are excited by, Ellie Goulding or kind of modern
Taylor Swift.
Thank you. Name a modern player. And what's the skill I'm trying to teach them? Well, they need to get into bar chords. Well, great, we can absolutely do that. Or and there's almost never a way that doesn't work. Even if you had some extreme example where this is very unlikely, but if somebody was really into Billie Eilish but wanted to learn to do two-hand tapping, we could do it. We could go, great, let's take a Billie Eilish melody and let's two-hand tap it. There's always a way of doing that. So I think that's a big kind of driver in my teaching.
It's this idea, isn't it, of like trying to marry up like someone's what they want to learn and what's going to make it really exciting for them, what the music they love, with the skills that they need as a musician. Or to develop as a musician.
That's it, and I think if you've done enough teaching and really thought about it, you know what those skills are, and you develop a very strong sense of A, knowing what they are, and B, knowing where they are on the sort of trajectory to getting there. So I can sort of instinctively now, I think, identify where they need to go next. And that's what I think the skill is of teaching. I think much more so than kind of being able to play all the songs in the rock school syllabus. Because that syllabus is only relevant for people that's relevant to. And like I say,
and it's also a benchmark, isn't it? It's not a syllabus to learn through. It's a benchmark of
exactly.
Where
and I think
there's
somebody asked me the other day whether or not I think skipping grades is a good idea. And I said, yeah, I do skipping grades quite often because it's that marrying up. Sometimes what they want to achieve, let's say, might be the grades.
Yeah.
What they want to learn is different to what's in the grade books. So you can develop the techniques that you need for grade 4 using songs that aren't in the grade 4 book, and then when they get to the grade, you kind of go, well, here's the grade 4 book, you know all these techniques, let's just learn these songs and go with it.
Absolutely, yeah. So outside of your teaching, and you're still doing a bit of gigging as well at the moment?
Yeah, I do depth gigging a lot at the moment.
Okay. You also run the Blues Guitar podcast. So tell us all about that. What's that about?
Yeah, so that started in lockdown. So as I said, I was living in Shanghai, China, 2017 to 2022, so right during that COVID period. We had a very sort of sudden lockdown. It seemed really weird at the time. It was like this just odd thing that was happening to us, and I didn't think it was going to go any further. But obviously, I was wrong. I was wrong on every count. I remember saying to everybody, "We'll be back at work in 2 days. This is nothing." And then, obviously, the whole world began to do its thing. So during that time, I was working at a guitar school. We were obviously unable to work to close the doors and all that. So I started teaching online. And basically because of the time difference, I was thinking, what's the most effective way that I can try and reach online students?
Yeah.
And that was kind of where the podcast idea came from. It was primarily because I was like, well, I don't want to do all the video editing required for YouTube. I know audio editing because that was what my degree was. And I'd got really into playing fingerpicking and blues stuff, so it kind of just followed along with that, but that's been going for 5 years.
It's a really neat connection of all your skills in there, isn't it? Like a culmination, almost driven out of a need. There's lots of musicians at the time were made unemployed, or gigs suddenly cut off completely, income streams were gone. So it's almost come out of a need that's kind of developed and grown, but using your skill sets.
Absolutely, and now it's like, I have people that listen all over the world, and it's like 250,000 downloads, and it's amazing. I get emails from people in Australia and Russia and Barbados and America, and it's very cool.
That's very cool. So one of the things that I thought we could do as part of this is find out a little bit about your musical life as well, about your teaching and your career. So maybe this is something we'll ask each of the people we kind of interview, each of the teachers. So is there a track that reminds you of growing up learning?
I mean, well, there's probably like a set list. It'll be my dad's function band set.
If you had to choose one that summed up your childhood or took you back to your childhood.
Yeah, and he's going to hate me for saying this, but I think it's probably Brown Eyed Girl.
Brutal.
just because I think that bass line, I had to play it at a gig New Year's Eve, and I feel like I didn't even need to learn it because it's just it's in my blood.
It's in you.
I think Brown Eyed Girl is probably a good shout. The one that my dad would prefer me to say is probably something like Wonderful Tonight, because he was a massive Eric Clapton fan. So most of my childhood was with Eric Clapton on in the background. But probably those two tracks are probably the ones that
Okay, and if you had to pass on a track to someone, what would your track be that you want someone to kind of reflect about you as being?
That's a good question. I think I would say I'll probably pick two, one for guitar and one for bass.
Yeah.
For bass, I'd say it would be All Around the World, Red Hot Chili Peppers, just because that's always been one of my favourite bass lines, and Flea is probably my favourite bass player. Hence why I've got a Music Man. And for guitar, that's a really tough one. I'll tell you one that I think it would be is R.L. Burnside's Going Down South. Not many people know about R.L. Burnside, but he's the last of the Hill Country bluesmen, or was before he passed away, and he had the most insane technique. So I'd say probably him.
Sounds good. It's been really great catching up with you. Thank you for all the work you do with us at Good Vibes, because we wouldn't be able to run without you and the work you do. So that's absolutely superb. And look forward to catching up again soon.
Cool. Cheers. Nice one.